Mammotion have just released their latest models for 2025. There's 4 new models on the market. We're going to go through each one of them, tell you what we know so far. They've been out for a week now, so we've got a little bit of information about what they are. Tell you what's going to be available in Australia and have a closer look at what they are. So we might go through the guys one by one. We'll go through each model, so we'll do the smallest to the largest. So we'll start off with the YUKA Mini, then we'll go to the LUBA Mini, then onto the standard YUKA, and then onto the new LUBA 2 X series, or LUBA 2. Basically they're still just the LUBA 2s, but we are calling them the LUBA 2 3000X, 5000X, 6000, 10,000X, thereabouts. So we'll start off with the Mini. We'll timestamp this video, so anytime you can jump forward and go to the section that you want to talk to, and then at the end we'll go through some of the pros and cons and what we know about the latest vision software that's actually going to be on all 4 models. So the YUKA Mini, I've got my little cheat sheet here so I can get the right numbers out to you, because there's so many models now and so many different variants of what's available in battery sizes and capacities and things like that. I don't want to tell you something wrong. So the YUKA Mini, we've already taken a little video on this prior, so you can have a look at that, but that was on day 1 of us knowing about them. We're now about a week or so into it, so we know a little bit more about what's going on. It's going to be available in Australia with the 600 and the 800 square metre model. There is also a 500 square metre model that is currently on the Mammotion website, but there's discussions about whether that's actually going to be made available or not. So we don't actually know whether the 500 is actually going to be available. Right now, as far as availability goes, the YUKA Mini, we shall have that in our store sometime around about the end of February. They're arriving in Australia about mid-February. But we won't have them here until sort of closer to the end of February, and we will absolutely be the first people to have these and dispatch them, because we are just down the road from the distributor, so we can physically go down and pick them up ourselves. Mammotion's website is currently saying April, and look, our understanding is that that's probably not quite right. It's probably going to be more like May, but in that ballpark. So Mammotion's stock will be available from about late April to early May. Our stock will be available around about the end of February. So, like I said before, 600 and 800 square metre model is what we know at the moment. The 2-wheel drive system of these guys available, capable of going up to 45% slope. So not too bad for a 2-wheel drive machine. I think they'll be really quite good. They weigh about 10.5 kilos, and that's across all the models. They're all the same, all the range, sorry. The mowing capacity, where it starts getting a little bit more interesting. So the 800 square metre model that comes with a larger battery, and we'll get into battery sizes in a second, they can mow about 230 square metres per charge, but it also takes 230 minutes to charge. So you're only getting about a 50-50 cycle out of that battery runtime side of things, but it's quite a long time for it to go. It'll only mow around about 80 square metres per hour, so it's going to run for about 150 minutes for the larger model. So so the mowing capacity of these guys are only around about 80 square metres per hour, so it is relatively quite slow. So the run time is required to get it to actually mow a decent amount of grass, and the charge time is also quite slow. So just bear that in mind when you're sort of selecting what robots that's going to be good for you. So the smaller model, the 600 square metre model, takes about 90 minutes to charge, and it runs for about 55 minutes. So it only mows around about 80 square metres. Thereabouts in its run time for the battery, and then it takes an hour and a half to charge before it goes back out again. So the larger one, like I said before, its run time is around about 150 minutes, and its charging time is around 230 minutes. So it's still much the same cycle. It's just you're going to get a longer run time, but also have a longer charge time as well. So that's the capacities on these guys. The blade size on these guys, 190 millimetres. So they've got the single blade under there with the five blades on this time, and they're 190 centimetres. Floating cutting deck system, which is really quite good, and it's a really solid system, and we'll get a little bit more into that when we start talking about the YUKA, and I'll tell you what we think about the YUKA's cutting system. The battery sizes, like I said before, the 800 square metre has a bigger battery. It's actually a 6.1 amp hour battery versus only a 2.4 amp hour battery in the smaller version. So that's the big difference in the runtime. And the batteries being removable really is quite a game changer. And again, we've gone through that in the video about that we took just on the YUKA. But you can take this cover off here and the battery comes straight out. The other big difference that they've sort of come on with now is that all of the Mammotion models now all come with a 4G data plan in the robot. So whether that's I doubt that's a SIM card. I assume that's actually going to be a hard-coded board, and it comes with 1 year's worth of data. So you'll use that 1 year of data up, and then you'll renew it in the app. So, but it's going to come standard on all 4 ranges, which is going to be fantastic. The cutting height system, the cutting height adjustments on the little YUKA Mini, 20mm through to 60mm on a manual cutting height adjustment, and it works quite well and it locks into position, so that seems to be quite good. And then the other common feature, and again I'll talk about this at the end of the video, is the new camera system on the front. So we've got a new camera system which allows these robots to now travel up to, as they're claiming, up to 300 meters without using satellite signal. So if it gets in poor satellite signal, it'll travel 300 meters before it actually stops working, as opposed to the previous models that would only run about sort of 25 to 50 meters. So big changes in the camera system, and again we'll talk about that at the end of the video. So that's YUKA Mini. We'll move on to LUBA Mini. Okay, so LUBA Mini, we don't have one. Hopefully we'll have a LUBA Mini a little later this month, hopefully, so we can start taking some videos on it. But we don't have one at the moment, so I'm going to put my hand on good old faithful LUBA 2. But the LUBA Mini, we'll put a picture up here so we can see, so I can tell you exactly what I'm actually talking about. Not this one, a smaller version of the same thing. Coming into Australia with 2 sizes, 800 square meters and 1500 square meter capacities. Honestly, my personal opinion is I think this particular model is going to be very, very popular. I think with the 4-drive capability and being in a smaller form factor is actually going to make a really big difference. The multi-zone management on the LUBA Mini is going to be 10 zones and 15 zones. So the smaller 800 square meter model will do 10 zones, and the 1500 will do 15 zones. The hill climbing ability of them again is going to be 80%, so the same as LUBA 2 was, and also the same as LUBA 2X when we get to that in a couple of models time from now in this video. So the slope capability is going to be fantastic. They seem to have, and I'm almost quite confident they have the same wheels as what LUBA 2 does, just in a smaller, slightly lighter machine. So they're really going to be able to climb very, very well, and they're going to do really, really well on thick grasses, particularly with the blade system that they'll talk about a bit further on here, and we'll put a picture up when we actually talk about the blade system. So around about the 15 kilo mark, so fairly heavy for a little machine, but these guys here are about 3 or 4 kilos heavier than that. The mow time per charge, actually I'll back one up. The speed that it mows appears to be the same from the specs. We don't really have a square meter per hour rate, but you can work it out from the specs that we do have. They appear to be traveling and mowing at around about the same speed, but because of the runtime, one mows more per charge than the other. So the 800 square meter model will do about 180 square meters per charge, and the 1500 will do about 250 square meters per charge. The runtime per charge is 2 hours or 120 minutes on the smaller 800 square meter model, and 165 minutes on the larger 1500 square meter model. And the charging time, again, same charge rate as appears, and the charging time is 160 minutes on the smaller 800 model and 200 minutes on the larger 1500 model. So that's the charge times. So the difference obviously that's changing that is the battery size, and we have a 4.5 amp hour battery in the small one and a 6.1 amp hour battery in the larger 1500 square meter, and that really is the only difference between the machines. They do appear this time to be almost the same machines, just with a different battery size and slightly different software that allows them to map more or less area, and also manage the amount of different zones and things that it's got, but theoretically they're going to be the same machine. The cutting system, this is where it gets really quite interesting, and I'll throw a picture up on the screen here of the actual underside of LUBA Mini. You'll see there's no blade guard system that's around it pretty much whatsoever, so it really is a completely free disc. Underneath there, there's nothing to obstruct the cutting system. There's nowhere for the grass to build up underneath the machine. It really does appear like it's going to be really quite good. There's a very, very large rubber bellow that goes around the cutting system for where it raises up and down. Yeah, until we actually see it, we won't be able to comment about exactly how strong that rubber boot's going to be, but it does appear to be quite good, and the likes of like even Husqvarna behind me here, they use a very similar rubber boot system like that protects the cutting system. So really the cutting deck this time appears to be really good. A 6-bladed system as opposed to the 5-blade that I showed you on the YUKA Mini earlier, and as opposed to the 4-blade system that's on the existing LUBA 2. So that's essentially sort of it for the LUBA Mini. Like I said, end of the month we should have them, we should have one to take videos with. The availability on the LUBA Mini is actually exactly the same as the YUKA Mini. So we're looking around about the end of February before we actually get them in our hands. Stock supposedly arriving with the supplier around about mid-February for us. But Mammotion stock again is going to be the end of April to early May before you see them from Mammotion. So a quick note on both the minis is that, so the stock that we'll actually be getting in, it's fairly minimal. So we've only got, I think we've only got about sort of 10 or 15 of the YUKA Minis and about 30 of the LUBA Minis coming in. So it's not going to last long before we have to reorder and get the next lot in. On to the next robot. The full size one. Okay, so on to the YUKA. Now this is the previous model YUKA, and as many of you probably know, if you follow our website and things, we don't actually sell the YUKA right now, but I do have one here to show you. This is the previous model, not the latest one that's coming out. The latest one that's coming out doesn't have a lot of changes, but a few key ones, and that is the camera is going to come out with the new camera system. But outside of that, there's not really a lot of differences that's going to actually hit with the current YUKA model. So I'll run very quickly through the specs, and I'm going to very quickly show you essentially why we actually don't sell this model. And hopefully when we get the new one, when we actually physically get a new one in our hands, hopefully some of these things that we don't like about this model has actually been corrected in the new model. However, we've sort of been told that that's not the case. We don't believe there's been really many or almost any mechanical changes with the YUKA. So available in Australia is going to be a 1,000 square metre model, 2,000 square metre model, and then there's a new 3,000 square metre model that's going to be available with obviously with just a larger battery. Same machine, 45% slope, so the same capacity, same as the YUKA. 30, 20 and 10 zone capability, so the 1,000 will have 10 zones, 2,000, 20 zones, 3,000 will have 30 zones available for its mowing areas. The cutting width of it is still the same as it always has been, and I won't lift it up yet, I'll talk about that in a second. So at 320 millimetres because there's no mechanical changes. The cutting height range is 20 to 90 millimetres. Going to have the, I don't know whether it's going to have the same cutting mode as what's in it now. They're promoting them as an 88 watt motor in the new one, so I do believe it will have different cutting motors in it, which will be the same cutting motor that will be in the YUKA Mini, and the same cutting motor that will be in the LUBA Mini, but not what will be in the LUBA X, because it'll be more powerful, and we'll talk about that when we get to the LUBA 2X. The battery capacities is where it gets a little bit interesting. The two smaller models, the 1,000 and 2,000, they've got a 4.5 amp hour battery, which is the same as what they've always had. But the 3,000 square model's got a 9 amp hour battery, which I can only assume that it's probably two 4.5 amp hour batteries. I don't really know exactly how they're doing that. So again, when we get them in our hands, we'll find out, or possibly the 3,000. Actually, no, I really don't know how they're getting 9 amp hours into that machine without putting the sweeper kit on the back. So on that note, the sweeper kit. So one of the reasons why we haven't got into the YUKAs is to do with how that sweeper kit's actually designed. Again, I'll throw a picture on the screen here just of what I'm talking about with the sweeper kit. But you can bolt on the sweeper onto the back of this robot. But the sweeper itself is it's a turning rubber spindle on the sweeper. And that rubber has sort of been very reportedly around the world, just doesn't last. So the sweeper kit, as much as we like it, the software hasn't been great at being able to maneuver the robot when the sweeper kit's installed, and the actual sweeper itself really is made out of, it's made out of a compound that's sort of not really suitable to continually be sweeping up sticks and leaves. It's just going to wear itself out. So we've sort of opted to stay away from the sweeper kit. I won't go through the mow times and charge times. They're all the same as what they were before, except for the new one. So the new one has got, it's it can mow up to 700 square meters per charge, charging time of 220 minutes, which is a very long time, and the mowing time is 150 or 130 minutes. So it uses quite a lot of power. It runs for 2 hours. It charges for 3.5 hours basically. So it really is quite a lot. Not much else I want to talk about on there, but I just want to show you essentially the system underneath this guy. Now, realistically, the only real reason that we've opted to not actually take these onto our range is really to do with the deck system and how it's actually put together. So the deck itself really is quite good. Floating deck, so it's up and down. It really does a good job. Cutting motors are fine. They're more than powerful enough to do the job. Where we have issues with it is really where this deck just wobbles side to side, and it's just not very stable. So that's really the primary issue that we sort of come across. It's actually held, so they've gone for exactly the right system to actually raise and to actually hold the back of the deck up with the cantilevered arms, and the cantilever works perfectly fine. The cantilevered arms themselves are not very strong to stop it from twisting, but where they've really the biggest issue we have is that the front of the deck is actually raised and lowered and actually supported by a cable. And I'll show a picture up here on the screen here of that cable. That's what holds the actual front of the deck up, and it sits about sort of here on the deck, but off-centered. So that's what sort of allows it to really flop side to side. So whenever the robot's turning sideways, the deck can pull sideways. It turns the other direction, the deck can pull the other way. It can really just flop around any which way it wants to. If you're cutting really low, it actually sits hard on the ground on the deck, and it actually sits quite well. If it sits cutting up nice and high, when the robot turns, it can fall sideways. So that's what we're waiting to see. As soon as we get a new version of YUKA in our hands to see exactly how it's put together, well, then we will absolutely be bringing these back into our range, as long as we're happy with how they're put together. My understanding is that the wire that's supporting the front there is now no longer off-centered. It's actually in the middle, which at least helps a bit, but they really need to stiffen up the way it actually sits underneath the robot so it maintains level. Even if we put the robot down flat, I'll show you another picture up on the screen here that I took yesterday. It shows the deck, if it's sitting there, it just sits sideways. So that's really the whole issue between why we don't actually stock these at this point in time. So the sweeper kit and the robot, they really are good machines. It's just that the quality of the grass cutting from it is a little bit, it can be great. Many people have had perfect results from them, but there's also been quite a few that don't. So we've opted just to sort of stay away from it at this point in time. As soon as we've got the new version in, we'll open one up, we'll have a look at it, and we'll find out whether all these things have been addressed. And if they have, we'll bring you another video and show you that we're actually going to start stocking them. So that is the YUKA. Okay, so basically on to the main event, which is the new LUBA 2 X series. Now, we're pretty excited about it, to tell you the truth. We really have been waiting for something to be, to upgrade the series that we currently have. It's not a new series. It is an upgraded from the previous series, but they've addressed some of the issues that we've been having with the LUBA 2 for the last 12 months. The issues that reoccur, they've generally addressed them, which has been absolutely fantastic. So we are really looking forward to getting LUBA 2s in that are going to be a much more reliable machine. Hopefully, time will tell. So they're going to be very much the same as they were before for us. So the pricing is going to be the same. The model sizes are going to be the same, other than there's no LUBA 2 1000 anymore. The LUBA 2 X series starts at a 3000 model and goes to a 5000 and a 10,000. And again, as we sort of explain to nearly all of our customers, is that going for the 10,000 square meter model is all well and good. But if the robot's not able to mow the grass fully in a couple of days and get over it, then generally the 10,000's not going to do you as well as you think. We generally cap that 10,000 square meter model at around about 7, maximum 8,000 square meters is where we recommend that the 10,000 square meter model be taken to, which also means that multiple 5,000 square meter machines is actually more beneficial and the same cost as multiple 10,000 square metre machines if you're trying to do large acreage. So if you're trying to do 5, 10, 15 acres, then multiple 5,000 square metre models is definitely better than multiple 10,000 square metre models. But there are some changes in the 10,000 now, whereas previously there were not. So let's run through the specs very, very quickly. The zone management side of things, so the LUBA 3000X, LUBA 2 3000X will do 20 zones. The 5,000 square metre model will do 30 zones, and the 10,000 will do 60 zones. The weight of the machines is very much the same as what was before. I think it says 18, I've got it right in front of me here, 18.6 kilos for the 3,000 and 5,000. And the 10,000 has got a slightly bigger battery, and it is a little bit heavier. So it measures in around about 19 kilos, so about might be 19.2. The mowing times, now this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because right back when we started LUBA 1s, there was a different travel speed or a different mowing speed for the 1,000, 3,000 and 5,000. Now that sort of all went away during LUBA 2, and they could all mow at up to 0.6 meters per second, which is quite quick for a robot. Whereas with the specifications we've got currently on the LUBA 2 X series, it appears as though they might have brought that back in again, and the mowing speed has been changed or altered for each machine, or each size machine. Because the mow time, or the charge times and run time for the 3,000 and the 5,000 are identical, because they both have 12 amp hour batteries in them. So they're still running the 7 amp charge power supply, so they've both got the same charge rate, which is 2 hours or 120 minutes to charge. So they've physically got the same run time, same charge time. However, they have different mowing capacities per charge, which is the 3,000 can mow up to 1,000 square meters per charge, and the 5,000 can mow up to 1,200 square meters per charge. So clearly, the only other variable there is the speed. So they're actually increasing the speed on that machine. So whereas the 10,000 square meter model, it'll mow up to 1,500 square meters per charge. It'll mow for 150 minutes, so it's 30 minutes longer than the smaller battery, and it'll take 240 minutes to charge, because again, it's the same charge rate, so it's going to take a bit longer to charge. But the 10,000 does have a slightly higher capacity, but because of the charge rate over a 24-hour period, it actually is much the same. The cutting systems in the new LUBA 2 X series, the cutting motors are larger, so they've gone up to 165 watt cutting motors, from about 88 that they currently are now. We haven't had much of a trouble with the actual motors themselves. They've been powerful enough. It's just simply that they've been burning themselves out, so they've been worked too hard, and they're burning out the driver board. So that's one of the most common faults that we have with LUBA 2. So with LUBA 2 X, that appears to be addressed, and we're hoping that it's going to be the same, going to be much better, I should say, when it comes to the capability of these cutting motors. If you watch any of our other videos about lubas, the biggest thing we always tell people is don't cut long grass, and that's essentially what always causes the issues, is that people are trying to cut long grass with a robot that's not designed to cut long grass. So Mammotion have sort of come to the party a bit, and they've gone, okay, well, let's just increase the cutting motors or make them bigger, to try and compensate for the amount of people that are doing the wrong thing with the robots. But anyway, look, 165 watt cutting motors now, they're going to have a hell of a lot more power. Hopefully we're not going to see any sort of burnouts when it comes to the cutting motors or the driver board that drives them. The battery capacity I touched on before was, so the two smaller models, 3,000, 5,000, got a 12 amp hour battery, and the 10,000 has a 15 amp hour battery, which accounts for the extra half a kilo of weight in the robot itself. So outside of that, again, the camera, it's going to have a new camera. So this is obviously just a LUBA 2, not a LUBA 2 X. But we've got a new camera coming on the front of the LUBA 2 that will have the same capabilities as all the other cameras that will come out on all the new series. Outside of that, there's no real changes. The only other one change that I did note, and it sort of comes to do with the cutting system again. This one's nice and messy because we use this one all the time. But the guards on the side of LUBA 2 are really still quite large. LUBA 1 were bigger again. LUBA 2, they're smaller. LUBA 2 X, they're actually quite a bit smaller again. They've actually shrunk the guards, and they're curved around as well. So there's going to be a lot less sort of grass being picked up by the guards. And they've also gone to a 6-bladed blade system as well, which, look, I've tried many times on different models on changing the amount of blades on things. The quantity of blades has never really given us much of a difference in cut results. It does cut a little better with more blades, but it also uses a lot more power, hence the increased batteries that LUBA are putting out now as well. So the original LUBA 2 only has 4. The new LUBA 2 X has got 6 blades per disc. So it's actually got 12 blades under it, which we'll see how that goes when it comes to grass build-up underneath there. But from all reports, they've done a lot of testing and they seem to have fixed the grass build-up a lot. They won't fix it completely, but they'll certainly do a much better than they have before. So that is a LUBA 2 X series. So they said they come in a 3000X, a 5000X, and a 10,000X. All right, so now I want to go through and just have a very quick chat just about essentially the systems that appear to be coming on the robots, and they're all going to have these systems, and they're common across the entire range. First of which is the camera system. So they're moving to a new camera system, or a new way of mapping that camera that mapping in the system's memory. They've got a new chip in the robot, which is capable of, I think it's 5 trillion actions per second or something, whatever it is. So they've got a much more powerful chip inside the robot, which is able to process a lot more information. So therefore, they're going to use a camera system that uses more information, and it's going to be able to actually do some more, basically doing more of a 3D mapping function inside the system. So the camera system has increased significantly, and again, we haven't been able to test this, so hopefully we'll be able to test it and show you the actual differences, and we'll compare LUBA 2 to LUBA 2X as soon as we possibly can. But it's going to allow the robots, all of the robots, to be able to travel up to 300 meters without any satellite coverage whatsoever, whereas currently, LUBA 2 does like 25 meters on a charging station, 50 meters out in the field. So that function alone, being able to do that without satellite signal, has what's really separated LUBA 2 from all the other robots on the market. So increasing that now to being able to run for 300 meters without satellite coverage is going to make a significant difference to the market, particularly in the smaller machines. Once we start talking about the YUKA Mini and the LUBA Mini, being able to have that functionality in suburban yards is going to be a complete game changer. They really are. It's the price point's low, the technology's high, and the ability for these things to actually map and work in a suburban backyard that's got sheds and trees and a house and a fence, front yard, backyard, all that sorts of things. This camera system really is going to make the difference. So assuming it does everything they claim it to do. So stay tuned. We'll take a bunch of videos once we've actually got them in our hands available to test. The other thing that's sort of common across the board is the warranty system for a start. So they've all stepped up to a 3-year warranty from a 2-year warranty. So every single Mammotion robot now has a 3-year warranty, which sort of adds on to that whole thing about reliability that I spoke a little bit about earlier when it comes to the cutting motors in LUBA 2, is that now doing that and offering that 3-year warranty, obviously that sort of tells me that they're actually, they're really backing behind the product, and they think that it's actually going to last much longer and be a far more reliable machine. Then the other feature, which I spoke about very briefly, I think with the YUKA Mini when we spoke, is the 4G SIM, or the 4G data plan that's actually in the robots now. They all come standard with 12 months worth of 4G data. Again, I assume that's going to be a hard-coded chip in the machine, but it's going to come with the data, so they're going to work with 4G straight out of the box, and then you'll have to renew that data after the year. I assume there'll be a function in the app to do so. There was one other thing that I just caught my ear on another review that I heard from actual Mammotion themselves, and that is the availability to back up their maps. So all of LUBA's previous predecessors, so LUBA and the YUKA, everything else, you could not back up your maps. So if you had anything go wrong with the robot, and you had to send it back into us for repairs, or service center for Mammotion, heaven forbid you have to do that, that you pretty much were almost guaranteed to lose your maps. Here we've done our absolute best to make sure we maintain people's maps, and we kept them and reloaded them back in the machine before they went out, because we do have the ability to take the maps out and put them back in again. But now, apparently, and the function's not available at this point in time, but across the range there will be a function onto the app where you'll be able to back up your maps, which is honestly, that's going to be absolutely fantastic. There's been people around the world screaming for that functionality, so the fact that Mammotion are listening is fantastic. And then just on the app itself, a lot of the functionality for these new machines is not actually available on the app yet, so there will be a new app or an upgraded app coming that will allow all this functionality. The other one I didn't talk about very briefly was with the new camera system. There is an automatic mapping function as well, so you can actually have the robot go out and actually map itself. How well that will work, we've got plenty of models here that actually that do that, but when they automatically map, we haven't seen much really great success out of it mapping right close to the edges and things like that. So if you're just in a hurry, you just want to get it up and running, you can hit auto map and it will auto map the area, but it's probably going to leave a good amount of uncut grass on the edges when you do that. So mapping manually is going to make the difference between whether it's close to the edge or not. So I think that's about it when it comes to the common features across the board. Okay, so the last thing I want to touch on, and I've touched on a bit throughout the video with a couple of the models there, but when can you actually have these things in your hot little hand? So we are going to get a shipment of the new LUBA 2 X series. They'll be in our hands. We believe on the 20th of February at this point in time, we'll have them here at our store. The containers arriving around about that 10th that's coming into Australia. So give us about 10 days after that to actually have them through the supplier and here. So we should have them basically around about the middle of February. The Mammotion stock for the LUBA 2 X series, they'll be available for the Mammotion store around about May. So they're saying April on their website at the moment, but it's actually going to be May. So we'll have them around about 2 months, maybe 2.5 months earlier than what they'll have them. The YUKA, the LUBA Mini, and the YUKA Mini, they're all on the following container, and that is due in around about the container is due to arrive around the middle of the month, so we should receive those just around about the end of February. And again, they're still not going to be available in the Mammotion site until sort of early May before they'll actually arrive. I know that's not quite what their website says, but I'm assure you that is the case. So LUBA 2 X from around about the middle of February. We will have the other minis, the YUKA, the LUBA Mini, the YUKA Mini will be the end of February before we actually have them in store. There is a fairly limited stock coming in that first shipment, so if you do really want one, by all means call us so we can actually arrange one for you. So the dollars, how much do they all cost? So let's run through very briefly, see if I can actually remember all the models and all the costs. The YUKA Minis, so the smaller one, which is the 800 square meter model, is $24.99, and the larger one, 1500 square meter model, is $31.99. Then onto the LUBA 2 X series, the 3000 is $41.99, the 5000 is $47.99, and the 10,000 is $72.99. So they're all the prices, the retail prices of everything, and we've gone through the availability. If you have any questions, please get in contact with us. If you want to know anything specific about any of these models, things that we can actually test and show you, by all means, drop a comment below. We can do some testing once we have them in our hands, so we can actually do some testing and show you exactly what you want to see. For people in Australia who are looking for one of these guys, email us, sales@robotlawnmowers.com.au. Check out our website, buy on our website, www.robotlawnmowers.com.au. Call us, you'll find our number on the website. After that, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those things. Thanks for watching.